Let's go to court now for the prosecution's opening statement.
The evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that on that day, Bionca Eliss also was having an ordinary day. And you will see through the video that we will show you, ladies and gentlemen, and there are going to be witnesses. Witnesses from Volunteers of America. You will hear from witnesses from Giant Eagle. You will hear witnesses from the police department. For Bionca Eliss, you will see that she went to the police department on that day. She went to the North Olmsted Police Department. She had a conversation with a police officer at the window. And that police officer will come in and testify to their conversation. Bionca Eliss did not like what she heard at the police department, so she leaves. And the evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that she went directly to Volunteers of America. You will hear the testimony from Diane Spihar, who is one of the managers of Volunteers of America. And on that particular day of June 3rd, 2024, she was working in the back, sifting through stuff to put out for sale. And Bionca Eliss comes back. Well, the evidence is going to show through video that prior to going back to the Volunteers production area, Bionca Eliss had spent several minutes sifting through a bin of knives. And she chose 2 knives. You will see that, ladies and gentlemen. You will see her in Volunteers of America walking up and down the aisle. She had a conversation with Diane Spihar, looking for a bathroom. The evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that she left Volunteers of America and that she went to Things Outlet. And you will have the opportunity to look at that video. Bionca continued to go into the store. She looked around, and you will see the video of that. She didn't chat with anybody, but she leaves. The evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that as she leaves, there is a cement pillar. And I want you to pay attention, because she takes those 2 knives and she hits them against the cement pillar to see their pliability. One knife that she had stolen drops to the ground, but she keeps the 12-inch butcher blade knife in her hand. The evidence is going to show, and the video corroborates, that she walks in to Giant Eagle. And you will see through the videos from the customer service angle, you will see inside the store where Margot Woods and Julian are shopping. You will notice, ladies and gentlemen, in the video, Bionca Eliss coming into Giant Eagle, and she's got the 12-inch butcher knife. And she has it right by her side. And she's walking. And she's walking. And you will see in the video, ladies and gentlemen, that Margot had paid for her groceries. She had her hanging basket on her cart. The child in the seat of the cart, walking out, going to load her groceries and go home. I want you to pay attention to the video. As Mrs. Wood is walking out with Julian, and they're actually having a conversation, Miss Ellis passes them going this way, for lack of a better word to describe. She would be going west, and they are coming east. And so therefore, she sees them walking, and she turns immediately around. And she follows them all the way out of the store. And you will see that she is walking in tandem with them. There'll come a point in the video where you will see that she is walking faster, so she passes them. She stops, waits for them to catch up, and follows them completely out of the store. The cameras outside, ladies and gentlemen, pick up that Margot goes down one aisle. Mrs. Wood is going down the aisle where her minivan is parked, and the evidence will show that this defendant is right on her heels, walking right behind her. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to show, the witnesses are going to testify, that they observed Bionca Eliss approach Mrs. Wood and Julian, and she goes and takes the knife and stabs Julian in the face. Miss Woods tries to fight her off. She stabs Mrs. Woods. And there are independent witnesses that were in the parking lot that sees her stand over Julian on the ground and plunge a knife into his back. And those are common, ordinary citizens that were there grocery shopping or going to grocery shop. Of course, screams were heard throughout the parking lot. People are screaming to call 911, and you will hear from Travis Bush, who sees the stabbing. You will hear from Matthew Stroud, who sees the stabbing and tells his wife to call 911. They all run over. You will hear from Cheryl Molaski. She's a nurse. She runs over. She's one of the first people that runs over, and she says that Miss Woods has that baby so tight that there is blood pouring out of his back. She tells them, we've got to put him down, and they start compressions. You will hear from Miss McClaskey. You will hear from Miss Craven. They are both nurses. One is a pediatric ICU nurse. She relieves her. They take turns. The police arrive. Meanwhile, the other witnesses are going to testify that after stabbing that child, Miss Ellis, taking her knife that is now clad in red blood, and she walks away. Just walks away very nonchalantly. The police now have surrounded the parking lot, and they tell her to stop. She immediately takes the knife and throws the knife. The same weapon that she used to kill Julian. She's arrested. She is taken into custody. Police officers will come in and they'll testify to their life-saving measures that they tried to use on the child. You will hear from officers that took crime scene photographs. You will hear from officers drone footage was taken of the area. You will hear from Shayna Gray from the medical examiner's office that'll talk about the trace evidence that was found and DNA. The DNA that matches Bionca Eliss. You will hear from Dr. Elizabeth Mooney, who's the medical examiner, an assistant medical examiner here in Cuyahoga County, who will tell you what the cause and the manner of death is.
All right, we'll pause it there and quickly turn to Florida for the Spencer hearing for convicted killer Jose Soto Escalera. Today, a judge heard final arguments from both the state and the defense before deciding whether to impose the jury's recommendation of the death penalty. Now, a Spencer hearing gives defendants a chance to present any additional evidence that could possibly alter that sentence, any mitigating factors. Now, last month, the jury found him guilty and recommended that Soto Escalera be put to death for murdering his mistress, Tanya Wise, and their unborn son. Here's a quick recap of how that all played out with highlights from some victim impact statements.
Is that the last time you ever saw your daughter, Tanya?
Yeah, by the door, yes.
She says it's mine, supposedly. I can't take chances. I lose everything. I'm going to blow her brains out so she doesn't talk.
On that day, I've lost my mother. I also lost the chance to have my mother watch me grow.
We, the jury, find Jose Soto Escalera guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. As we count 2, guilty of first-degree murder of an unborn child. So say we all.
Now, Soto Escalera declined to testify, and the defense didn't put on a case. However, during closings, his attorney argued that his ex-wife had something to do with Wise's murder and interfered with people speaking on his behalf during the penalty phase. Well, today, the parties had one final opportunity to present that evidence before the formal sentence is handed down. Now, the mitigation specialist called by the defense offered some background on Soto Escalera's family.
Transgenerational trauma is something that the science supports, that it's passed down through the generations. So even though in this particular case, even though Jose was not yet born when his mother was a teenage mom, a very young teenage mom, and gave birth and then had the baby die at home, her trauma would pass down to him. And I'm not a biologist. I'm not that kind of scientist, so I don't want to overstep my area of expertise. But I will say, just from the psychological impacts of that science, it shows that this kind of trauma gets passed down biologically, that it actually has impacts on kids and their brain development, emotional development, and things that are, these would be a biological factor, but also a social environmental factor where, in this case, mom is having self-medicating and things like that.
All right, the judge took all the evidence under advisement and plans to announce his decision on Friday, October 10th. All right, coming up next here on Court TV, folks, the state wraps up its opening statements, and then the defense breaks down the defendant's background, explaining how she was not in her right mind in the Toddler Stabbed Murder Trial of Bionca Eliss. And the Texas man is sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty ahead of his trial. What the family of 4-year-old Cash Gernon had to say to the man who stabbed him to death. Keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, we're live with the latest and the biggest cases from across the country. Catch up on new developments with insight from our panel of experts.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
A wife accused of murdering her prominent attorney husband, and the defense involves blaming her own sons?
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rowlands. New episode Saturday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
We're watching opening statements in the toddler fatally stabbed murder trial of Bionca Eliss going on in Ohio. Let's go back in now for more of opening statements.
And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, you will hear from Dr. Stephen Nofsinger, who is the state's witness, rebuttal witness for this not guilty by reason of insanity. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Bateo and I have the burden of proof. We accept the burden of proof. The charges for you to consider in this case are those of aggravated murder, murder, felonious assault, child endangering, attempted murder of Margot Wood, felonious assault of Margot Wood, tampering with evidence, and theft. Ladies and gentlemen, the state is confident that when you hear all the evidence in this case, and again, I ask you, pay attention to actions and to words. They're very, very important in this case. And when you do that, you will find Bionca Eliss guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for each and every count of this indictment. She knew what she did. She appreciated the wrongfulness of her actions. You be the judge of her actions. Thank you, Your Honor.